Welcome back to another conversation with Derek. How you going, Derek?
Hey, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm surviving.
Yeah, another week?
Well, yeah, another week.
Yeah.
Our restrictions are starting to ease, so that's pretty good.
Oh, what are they allowing you to do now?
Well, you can go have a picnic in the park,
Okay.
but two people, still social distance.
All right. So we've never had where you couldn't do that.
Okay.
But although I'm sure, so here, I don't know how it is in Australia, but at least here, there's not a lot of federal government guidance. So it's really state by state. And even
Yeah.
then it can be like county by county, very specific. So we have a pretty nice park system in the little area I'm in. And we have still, like, I take the kids there every afternoon during the week, spread out a blanket. They ride bikes. I read books. So that's been open, but I'm never within like 50 feet of a non-family member. You know what I mean? Like, so it's never been bad or anything. I didn't realize there you couldn't even have gone to a park.
Yeah, they were fighting people if they weren't exercising in a park.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's also no consequences here either, but
yeah.
I mean, definitely everything is like completely, totally weird here. I don't want to make it sound like it's, normal at all. It's just that I think they're counting more on like personal responsibility, which is like, unfortunately the culture here.
Yeah, don't think that's working over there.
No, it's not. We haven't. I mean, in the county, in the place I'm at, I'm sure I said this last week, but it's the same situation now. We haven't reached any kind of peak or anything. I mean, it's still, climbing up. So it's scary, especially you got both me and my wife have elderly parents, right in that spot. And when you think about like not being able to see them and whatnot, it's just, it's still very, very real and scary.
Well, I think in our state where I live, it's only had one case in the last week, I think it was, or something like that. So it's getting to the end, maybe, until the second wave.
Yeah, that's good. So is Queensland your state or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Queensland state.
Okay.
And it's a big state. It's huge.
Yeah. So when you first said something about, and I don't remember if I don't think we were recording, but I asked if you live by the beach. And you were basically like, it's Australia. We all live by the beach. And I remember being like, well, that can't be true. The state is huge. And so I'm like going into a map to find all these towns and stuff. And of course you live there. Of course it's true. but it was crazy how huge these land masses were when you put where the population stuff is. It's just like really, really concentrated in a couple of places. It was just, I don't know why I never knew that. I literally have no understanding of the geography of Australia. There's a cold case crime podcast I used to listen to, and he happens to be Australian. So he features a lot of like Australian crimes and stuff. And that was like the extent of my Australia knowledge when it came to geography.
Yeah, there's probably lots of cold cases here.
Yeah.
We are a country of convicts.
Yes. It was like and it was funny because not funny. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Okay. It was every case was like they were going down the highway. It was like 20-year-olds hitchhiking. Do you know what I mean? And then like 20 feet from the highway is just bush forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was like, and there turned out to be a serial killer on the highway. And it's like, well, the conditions look pretty good for it, like.
Have you seen the film Wolf Creek?
No, I haven't. Is that what that's about?
Pretty much. It's an Australian horror thing, yeah.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
But that's pretty much how all the stories go in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty like the one I listened to, I remember them being like, yeah, they posted a bunch of stuff saying like, don't travel alone, like not even with two people, all this stuff. And this like went on for years and years. And it was like one highway. I think it connected like Queensland to Sydney or something. I don't remember which high, but anyway, it was just kind of eerie how every story was like basically the same. And you've kind of felt like, well, there's not a lot of protection for this. But. So
yeah, a little off topic, but this week we're going to talk about the internet, I guess, is the topic.
Yeah.
And basically, the idea came from last week where you asked about readathons.
Yeah.
And how readathons was just trying to make reading more of a social thing. And I think it'd be interesting to talk about like the internet and how the internet is trying to make reading more social. It is a place where people seem to go.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. Like, I'm really new to it, obviously, as we've talked about. But I think a lot of people that are kind of looking for, and it's especially a good time to talk about it since this is like our connection, not just you, but the whole world. And I think people are looking for those kind of outlets. So Twitter is really the only thing I'm familiar with. Obviously, I do YouTube, so I guess BookTube, but I don't find YouTube to be very community based. Do you think some booktubers would disagree with that?
I think it was in the past.
Okay.
I think it's just gotten so big where it's hard to find a group, and there are cliques everywhere in the community. It's trying to break into that can be very difficult.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't even necessarily mean. Well, it's just hard, right? Because like there's just comments on videos, so your conversations. Yeah. I mean, I think that's how you and I probably first started, even communicating, was I would just comment on a video you watch, you did, or you on mine, but you're kind of limited to whatever book you're reviewing or whatever your topic is. It would be weird to then extend that out to a larger conversation in that moment, in that medium.
I think with BookTube, seems to be the starting point for a lot of conversations. Yeah. And then you start to really like this person's opinion, and maybe you'll follow them on other social medias like Twitter or Instagram.
I'm very curious about Bookstagram because I'm not, I'm on Instagram for like family stuff. That's it.
Yeah.
Actually, Agnes, I really like from Beyond the Epilogue, tagged me on an A to Z book thing, which is a fun thing to watch, and I love watching it. But I just like completely compartmentalize my internet life, and that one, like Instagram, to me is literally like for my parents to see pictures of the grandkids. And I think from following me, I post like twice a month. You know what I mean? Like I'm not active the way that I am on something like Twitter. But I am kind of curious. I started following literature and translation, or a hashtag. Maybe it was translated literature. And I think that there is maybe some potential, or maybe it's already there and I just don't know about it. The problem with Bookstagram is that the content all looks very too curated for books. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think social media is always going to be curated. There is this aesthetic that seems to be commonly used over the place. But honestly, I thought you were using Instagram to get drafted into the NFL.
It's funny. I don't even like football. My son, who's 8, is addicted to football. So on my stories, I was doing around the draft some throwing with my son and some jokes.
Yeah.
So that's what that's.
I like Bookstagram because it is nice to just show a picture of a book and talk about a book. It's an easy way to have a conversation about books. I think I like it better for book hauls and
Mm-hmm.
showing off what you're currently reading. Like
Yep.
for me, I'm not like book hauls really depend on YouTube, really depend on what books they're talking about. And I don't really like the like Friday reads type videos because they age so quickly.
Well, what is the? I see that tag a lot, but I've actually never looked at it. What's the idea behind Friday Reads?
Well, Friday reads I think started on Twitter.
Okay.
It's basically it's Friday. I'm going to tell everyone what I'm currently reading.
Okay, so not what I plan to read over the weekend, like what I'm reading to. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much started, and I kind of evolved a little bit. And I think on BookTube it's more about this is what I'm reading and this is what I'm planning to read.
Okay.
And it's probably just an easy way to do a video. I've done heaps of them.
Yep.
But, you know, a week later, it's out of date kind of thing.
Yeah. Those are the kind of things that I should learn more about and should frankly probably do. I mean, I like for BookTube, like since I've been reading that Perec and still am, like whenever I read one of those big ones, I mean, it's gonna be a long time before I have content. You know what I mean? Like I stopped. This week I took a break to read and review prose poetry, which I had never reviewed poetry. I do not read much poetry, and the book was worthy. I mean, it definitely like spoke to me, and it was such a small independent press, unknown author, unknown translator. That's the kind of stuff that I really, really like to personally review, you know? But I mean, that's the only thing like that I would be able to do right now. And I'm not going to suddenly become, you know, an expert at poetry. Like that was kind of a one-off. So when I read these massive tomes, it would be nice. I should probably do stuff like Friday Reads. I have, before when I have seen there's one that I followed for a while. I won't say the name, but they didn't call it Friday Read. She happened to call it something else, but it felt more like like sort of like we were talking about with the readathon, an accumulation as opposed to a true interest in whatever the work was, right? So it was like, how much can I read thing like within a 5-day period, as opposed to like, oh, I really liked this or I didn't like that. I remember I stopped because I noticed that there was 3 books that she had mentioned she read without saying if she liked them. It's like, well, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't watch a movie and then talk about it and be like, yeah, I watched that. Okay, well, what'd you think? Like, did I watch it? I don't know. Like, so yeah.
I think a lot of that comes to monthly wrap-ups and weekly wrap-ups. Like there's a lot of, it feels like quantity over quality kind of thing, and it might not be. They might be just really fast readers.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Yeah, I mean that's true. I can't. I'm not within this community. I would never be considered a fast reader. So you know, I can't knock that. And I know there's people that can read loads and loads of books, but I feel like I can, as a viewer of any kind of that content, I feel like I can sense when that's the point of the content as opposed to something else. And I'm not saying that something else always has to be a review, but you know, I do like to get to know people's taste in what they like, you know, and what it is that they're reading. It's important to me, I guess, to know what someone's reading, but usually I want to know if I like their taste before I want to know what they're reading. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you bring up a good point, and I'm going to ask you, because you only review the books you like.
Right.
How do people get to know your taste if you don't talk about the books you don't like?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, ideally, I think you get to know the taste through what I like. Okay. I think that tells a story. I think sometimes about, would it ever be interesting to once a month do a video showing, here are the books that I read this month that I didn't review, without saying anything negative, but it's just, I couldn't figure out what to do. I mean, like you, when I first started, I just reviewed everything, and I couldn't figure out what to do. Like, you're doing this amateurly, but you want to also like be professional in a way, like in the sense that like you want to decide like what's your voice and what's your aesthetic and what's your point of view. And for me, it was like, all right, how like do I want to do literary critic style where like you truly are critiquing the work?
Yeah.
Which I love reading great criticism. I mean, I love reading great criticism, stuff I like, stuff I don't like. And I think in a video type format where you wouldn't need to cite as much or be as stringent academically, I could be fine with that. But I actually think I recorded 2 and never posted them. Went back like as I was editing and stuff and just being like, I don't have anything interesting to say other than I didn't like it. Like the couple that I have not liked that I've posted reviews of, the Dag Solstad's Professor Anderson's Night, for instance. Like I used that as an opportunity to talk about something totally different that the book brought up. So at least then it feels like I am saying something. Many times when I don't like a book, if it is something that I expected to like going in, then I sometimes chalk that up to just like it hit me at the wrong time. Does that make sense? Like, or I picked it up at the wrong time. Like, if a lot of smart readers, reviewers, and booksellers are liking something, and it is, a publisher I like, and it's typically like the style I would like, and I don't like it. I mean, that's how I was by Garden by the Sea. I think is what it was. And can you pronounce her last name or her name? Roderero? Is that
Roderera? Yeah.
Roderera. Okay. So that's how I think I was with that, where I started that March 8th or 9th or something around then. I just remember because it was when we were shut down. And then I was halfway done with it whenever our quarantine started, where it was like my wife and I had to work from home. And so like my reading habits, everything changed, everything stopped. Well, so I finished it. I didn't like it. It ended up. And I think so much of it was due to how I read it. I started reading it in one world and I ended it in another. And obviously that's a big, like, once in a lifetime type of example, but it kind of happens. And, sometimes with books where you just feel like maybe it wasn't me. Now I got Death in Spring and I plan on reading that this year and seeing maybe it'll be, I don't like her writing. I mean, that could be the case.
It might be. Yeah.
It might be. But I don't know. I mean, but you don't review. Now, you don't just review, but I mean, I guess with Serotonin, you talked about an author you don't like, but you didn't necessarily say like you like his work or his.
I think he has interesting things to say.
Yeah. Like, so do you, are you good? Do you like reviewing books that you don't like, or will you do that now?
If there's something interesting to say, ideally I'd like to have more reviews, and I would like to talk about books that I don't like and why I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's value in actually criticizing stuff. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I find it interesting to explore reasons why a book doesn't work for me personally, and why like authors don't work for me and stuff like that. I think it's interesting to do that.
I agree, and I like watching it. So, I think it may just come down, as you said, like something to say. Like the ones, like when I made the decision, like not to, it came down to me feeling like I didn't have anything to say about those 2 particular books.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them was a Caesar Aria book. Those things are 40 pages long or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, like if you don't like it, it would take me like longer in a 15-minute review probably to explain why I don't like it than it would for you just to read it and decide. So, you know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah.
You know, so there was that. And then, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was looking today. I believe for you guys and for England, there will be Despentes Volume 3 this year, right?
I think it's late June.
Okay. So
assuming that things are still the same.
Okay. So yeah. So I will do what I did with 2 because 2's not out here even yet. But I will do what I did with 2 and order it from, there was like a British whatever. I don't even know. I don't know how stodgy or weird the company is, but I'll order it from them, and I have to review that regardless since I reviewed the first 2. If the trajectory of the work is more like 2 than 3, then it will be a negative review. So,
yeah,
but in that sense, like, you can't not review 3 if you reviewed 1 and 2, so I don't know, like it could change. But it's just like the other thing too, when you're starting out and this is like kind of hard to admit, but true. I mean, when you're like me, and you have low view count and you really try not to pay attention to it because it's not what's important, and like views have a long tail and stuff, but like one of the things you don't want to do, I feel like, is have one person try your channel one time, see content they hate or disagree with you vehemently, and never again check out what you're doing. It's such a small group of people that are going to be interested in watching someone or listening to someone review a book that I do kind of think about that, if I'm being honest. You know what I mean? Like,
interesting. There's so much we could probably talk about reviewing and methods and what we want to get out of it, but
what about spoilers? That's something that that's something I struggle with a lot because, so what was, The Wind That Laid Waste. The Wind That Laid Waste by Selma Almada.
Yep.
Translated by Chris Andrews, actually. I usually can't pull that off, but Chris Andrews was one of Bolano's main translators, so that one is a little easier. So that book, what I really wanted to talk about with it was the end. Like, and there's enough to talk about where I like my review. I'm very happy with it and stuff like that. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to sit down with somebody that had read it and been like, did this happen or this happen? Do you know what I mean? Because I felt that it was like really ambiguous and unclear. And then I think somebody I had talked to on Twitter or whatever, I had asked, and they didn't see that at all, But I think about my reviews in terms of like both people, the people that are interested in the book, and so they want to hear if it would be for them, and also the person who just closed it, and I want it to be for both people so I don't end up discussing that.
I think sometimes there are needs to go through and talk about the ending, the spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
I think trying to navigate that is tricky. Like, I did a review of Fleisman is in Trouble, which is like a Philip Roth type book, where I thought talking about like something was going to be a big spoiler, so I left that at the end.
Yep.
So like you talk about the book and say, all right, from here on out, it's probably going to be spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then click away or something like that. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that title because I believe I had that book spoiled for me today, inadvertently. Okay. Now, this is not a book that I would have sought out, but for... Okay, so whoever wins the Pulitzer, like I do read the Pulitzer Prize winner every year, even though it's an American one. It won the Pulitzer. Like, I'll try it. And the Pulitzer, to me, it's fascinating because I've read some of the worst books that I've read that have won Pulitzer Prizes. I'll just give a straight up example. Less, like, I do not like that book. Like, I didn't understand. I think Andrew Greer's the writer, so I'm not. Yeah. But I just did not understand how that was a Pulitzer Prize. On the other hand, many years ago, Tinkers was like a surprise winner by Harding. Can't think of his first name. I loved that book. And there's so many people that hate it, like they can't. So, it's sometimes it's just a weird one. Well, anyway, today I watched a booktuber who I actually really like, supposedly fun. His name's Greg, but I think supposedly fun or whatever. And he gave some predictions because tomorrow the Pulitzer's announced. He did not mention the one that I think is going to win, but he gave some predictions, and he talked about Fleischman's In Trouble, explained why he had been hesitant to read it, which was the same reason I wasn't interested either, honestly, like male coming of age story, and then explained what I think is the spoiler, you know what I mean? And which is a point of view thing, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. So said that, and I was just surprised because I was like, well, okay. First off, that definitely makes the book more interesting, but if that's not clear from the beginning, then it makes me also want to read the book a little less. Does that make sense? Like,
I think it was like with that book, I think it was important to like explore what was happening from his point of view and then flip it.
Okay.
I tried to talk about it without spoiling it. I think that's what made the book worth it.
Okay.
I love that book, and I don't read many American books, so that book, just something about it just sounded so fascinating. And I don't think I've actually read Philip Roth.
Philip Roth is fine. I have never understood.
Yeah. I thought you were into bro lit.
I am, right? Like, I definitely, like, my history of reading is all about bro lit. His sexual obsession stuff is like not interesting to read to me. It's very neurotic in a way that, like, even when you could personally, as a guy, maybe understand or whatever, like, it's just not. Sometimes there's things where, like, it's like not really literature to me. It's more like a psychotherapy session. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, that's what some of Roth reads like to me, which I know is like blasphemous for some people. They love him. But I don't know. I mean, just like what I've read, I'm just like, okay, he's working through some shit. You know what I mean? Like, but it just like doesn't appeal to me as literature, if that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe it's like a time thing too. Like, at the time that it was written, I'm sure that it was probably like way more influential. Like, you're going through this now as you're like starting to do a lot more classic movie stuff, right? Like, you're seeing that thing where, okay, this was a really influential movie, but maybe it's like not as much fun to watch anymore. Does that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's with the 70s. I'm really fascinated by the 70s in film where, like, rating system has started to come in. I think it was 1969 where they brought it in, and people are going, well, now we can show nudity and ultra violence and drugs, and they kind of leaned into it very much so.
I love 70s film. I mean, it's my favorite era of film, you know, and I went through a crazy phase where that's like a ton of what I watched. So I totally get it. But it doesn't all hold up. Like, some of it is shocking to be shocking, but some of it also is not. It's too of its time, you know, and you know. Well, so the spoiler thing, that's always interesting to me. And what I'm doing right now, actually, like, so to make it more interesting to read, like, the Perec thing is really long, and I'm reading even slower than normal, but it's divided into 6 parts. So I'm filming as I read it.
Okay.
So I'm through 4 parts, and I filmed 3 of the things. So one, it will be a longer review, obviously, but it is not so much a review as I would call it. But there's definitely, this is the first time where a book that's 6 parts that is a puzzle, because the book is a puzzle, like, you can't even really talk about unless you're going to, at certain points, say, listen, if you haven't read it, don't you know what I mean? Because you wouldn't be able to move on to the next thing. The first example I gave, The Wind That Lays Waste, I mean, it's a 120 or whatever page book. Like, I mean, spoiling it really kind of spoils the book. But if you're going to do a large thing that is narrative based like that, so in other words, like not Ducks Newburyport, where it's kind of, you know, then you do need to, I think, have some points in there where you talk about stuff that happens 300 pages in, or else it's just not that interesting of a review. So I will do it with that, and we'll just say, hey, there's spoilers, but something that classic, most of what I review is it's newer, it's usually published in the last 10 years for the English version.
Yeah. I think classics can be a little different. And I think there are books where spoilers don't really affect it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's more about the experience you have reading it. And I think Life and User Manual would probably be that. I haven't read it.
Well, I mean, so far it is. I mean, obviously there's 2 parts left for me to read. There could be some, it was all a dream. They were all dead, whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
This is the meaning of life.
It could be some spoiler, but I mean, so far I would doubt it. I mean, it's definitely the experience of reading it. I mean, Infinite Jest for Bro Lit. I mean, there's nothing to spoil in Infinite Jest. It starts at the beginning. I mean, at the end, rather. And it is as incomprehensible the second time you read it as the first time. You know what I mean? Like,
I reckon you can spoil the tennis scores.
Yeah. Yeah. But then there's some that, I guess you can't really spoil Moby Dick.
No.
It's something about those smaller work. I guess it just depends on the work, but so that's my thing with spoilers. Yeah, I do kind of struggle a little bit because sometimes what I want to talk about is really critical to the book. That's the only real one though that I can, like, recent one I can think of, because there was enough to talk about with Tentacle, even though there are huge spoilers in that. Me and you talked about hurricane season. You could spoil that. I just thought of that.
Yeah. But I think you already know that this has happened.
No, but I think you could spoil the one thing.
Sure.
Because I think that's, like, to me, while I was reading it, that was the one holy shit. I mean, the whole thing is holy shit. But, like, that's the one, like, whoa, okay, that changes how we're going to think about, like, motivations here. You know what I mean? Like, so I do think you could spoil it by calling it that and by saying that. And I've noticed, I don't know about you, but I have not seen that mentioned much on Twitter. I'm writing in the private chat to make sure you sure.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that we're on the same page about, like, I kind of expected that there would be more chatter about that on, like, Twitter, considering there's so much talk about the book in general, but there's not. Do you think that's an effort to not spoil it, or do people not think it's as big a deal as I do?
Well, I don't think of it as a big deal. I think, like, it seems common. Like, you watch movies. Like, I just watched The Sting last night, and it's like, oh, of course, that, like, something similar happens there.
Yep.
And it's not really a big deal, I don't think. It just, to me, it kind of feels like, oh, that's obviously going to happen.
Yeah. I feel like I know the bad guys in that book. And I really did feel this way while reading it too. Like, so I grew up in the rural South, like, not as rural as you can get, but I'm very familiar with the very rural South, and I'm very familiar with a certain type of racist bigotry kind of bros, and I felt those characters on the pages of that book. And so to me, like, aspects of the story and aspects of the book, like that spoiler or whatever, was an important part of how they would react to the world around them or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah. That's so, but maybe it's not, I mean, Maybe it's not. And we don't read a lot of genre stuff, where spoiling. I mean, if you tell a Raymond Chandler ending, then yeah, that does kind of spoil it. I mean, half the fun is figuring out the thing. But like, with literary fiction, for the most part, you're not going to get into spoiler territory. So
yeah. I don't mind reading crime. Like, I'm very specific of what I pick.
Yeah.
But I do not know how to review that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean,
I don't know if it needs a review. It's like, was really enjoyable, and that's pretty much all you need to say.
Yeah. Well, I reviewed that Manchette stuff,
Yeah.
But I felt that there was a political aspect. I mean, there is a political aspect to his stuff. So that was cool to talk about. And since it is my politics, like, it gives me basically an excuse to talk about that stuff. And then the only other one I reviewed was that Ricardo Piglia. And, honestly, the reason that I liked reviewing that was he was a literary critic. That was like his job, and this was just, I mean, this book, along with his fiction stuff, was not how he was going to be like remembered, he was a literary critic. And so it was really cool to read that and to be like, all right, here's these references and here's these sort of like inspirations. But in truth, if he was just a straight up writer, like, there wouldn't be much to say because you'd just be giving away every twist and turn.
Yeah, true.
Crime is difficult, but crime to me is almost always a palate cleanser. Like when I'm reading funk,
or you've got the COVID-19 happening.
Yeah, but I got out of that.
You got out of that?
I got out of the crime. Yeah, I didn't get out of the COVID-19. I'm not the only person.
Okay. I was thinking you cleansed your palate and now you're back to reading really.
Yeah, I am. I mean, Perec is a tome of a book. That's got to count, as a serious big work of fiction or something,
Only if you can finish it.
I know. I'm almost there. I'm doing all right. I just have less time. I don't have any alone time anymore.
Is there any other bookish internet? Like, I really think you'd probably get into Translation Thursday.
Yeah, I really like that he does that. That's Stu, right? On Twitter.
Stu, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is similar to Friday Reads, but it's more about, here's a translation I'm currently reading.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. But there's not much else to say beyond that. See, I like conversation. And when I first... See, I used Twitter years ago for other stuff, like sports interest I had or whatever. I didn't even think to like look for books, well, anyway, so when I was like, you know what, I really want to engage with the literary community, Reddit was the first place I looked. And I know that was really bad. But I thought,
I was going to say,
well, I came from message board culture.
Yeah.
So to me, like, that's where and how discussions happen. And you get to know posters, and it's a small community. Reddit's not like this, but I mean, the old message board culture, it was a small community and you really got to know people and their taste and what all that stuff. So I didn't know Reddit and I didn't know what the deal was with it. So I thought, there's got to be like a literary translated Reddit, or at least like a literature Reddit. Of course, I found a literature Reddit, and within a day, like new. It's like, no way, absolutely not. Well, the thing about
r/translated lit is very dead.
Yeah, and that's dead. Yeah, I mean, it is, but it's kind of unfortunate because that's a good medium. Like, the thing about the reason I brought that up is Translation Thursday is awesome, and I love it to see what people are reading. But with Twitter, there's a lack of conversation. Sometimes it kind of ends there.
Yeah,
here's what I'm reading, and that's great, and I love to see it. But like, that's the end of the conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that is my overall problem or thing I have with sort of the internet and books, is that I wish there were more social ways for us to engage, like, as readers,
Yeah, I feel like Twitter's more about promoting yourself now.
Yeah.
I think there was a stage where conversations happened a lot. I feel like that kind of died down, and it's more about, oh no, Donald Trump did this, or politics, and
Yep.
here's what I'm reading, or here's a link to my video or my blog post, and that's the extent of the conversation. I find it very difficult to engage with people on Twitter nowadays.
What I think it makes it difficult, and this is why I go back to liking aspects of message board culture for conversation, is that on Twitter, when you engage, you're engaging publicly with every aspect. You know what I mean? And so now my Twitter is just literary stuff, but they are in two different corners, you know, in a sense, like translated literature, but then also like really small press American type stuff that is like avant-garde and weird. And those two things don't mesh really or meet that often. But there's definitely times where I wouldn't want to, I don't know, get in a huge, like, you know, you just like you're tweeting too much or something. You know what I mean? If you're like a huge conversation and someone's following that. Yeah. I did a Twitter thread the other day. Like, that was such a weird thing. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel weird doing that, you know, like.
I guess that's why I created the Discord, which I link in every video that we've done.
Yeah.
It's a very small community now, but it does remind me of the old message board style.
Me too. And I wish I wish something like Discord, or even that Discord, I mean, that would be the ideal, would.
Yeah.
And now it sounds like this whole thing was a setup for like joining Discord.
It wasn't. No, wasn't. You mentioned message boards, and I thought we should plug it because I do link it.
But it is because, you know, there's that, like, there's a film section there. Like, everyone, even if you're me and you're not super into films, like, you know, you've watched The Sting maybe or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, there's still a comment there, you know. Just like, I think that you can talk about things there, and the fact that you can then have private conversations. Like, if you do want to talk about a book, one other person has read it, no one else has, you know, you just move it to a private thing and say like, hey, what did you think of this? You know, one of the things is, like, I'm not a great reader. I really like to talk to someone who's read a book to see like what different things we got. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is, if I had an ideal for my channel for reviews, it would probably be a conversation with someone where we had both read the book, but where it was totally spoilered. You know what I mean? Like, you went into it knowing, like, listen, do not watch this if you know, and it was just two people kind of talking the book. I made the mistake. I did not go to college for what I should have gone to college for, you know, and done literature the right way and stuff. So I feel like I missed out on a lot of those conversations. And unfortunately, as like an adult, that's what I'm trying to have a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, my experience with literature came when I was like 29. So
yeah.
So I'm still playing lots of catch up. It's like I missed out on 29 years of reading.
But do you ever wish you were in those small seminar classes where like the whole job was just to discuss this one book that you love?
Yeah, I really find those interesting.
Yeah.
It depends on the person. Like, I don't like going too academic.
Yeah.
I like to learn about the academic side. I like to learn about literary criticism and how it can be used to break down a book. But I really like the conversation, the listening to people just who clearly love literature just talk.
Yeah. I agree. I do too. And you find aspects of that for sure on the internet, but not as robust or whatever it is. I mean, do you think part of it is it the personality type of readers nowadays? I mean, is it,
I don't know, maybe
more introverted set by like?
I think it'd be interesting to talk about podcast, maybe in another comp. But I think that's probably the medium that would best suit that kind of conversations.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Man, they're pretty hit or
But
miss.
that's a whole conversation just talking about.
Well, I think it fits into this. So, I mean, so podcasts,
Yeah.
like, do you have literature podcasts that you regularly listen to and like?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
It's Lost in No, it's not. I don't like listening to myself talk. But I do have a heap. I really love 3%.
Yep. As you know, I do as well.
I just love like hearing about the like industry stuff.
I do too. And then I like Tom. You know, you have made the joke about me liking Chad's stuff so much. It's actually Tom Roberts, the other co-host, whose book taste is like. I mean, I've never found a miss. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I know he's a bookseller, so like obviously that's part of it. But you know, like the fact that he has a crime and noir background, like it's just, you know, I've always. That's where I got. Yeah. That's why I decided to read the Perrette, because he had started to read it and liked it. And it was like, well, this is going to be great, I'm sure. I like their stuff because they have conversations. Sometimes it's too industry specific where I like it a little bit for the gossip and stuff, but it's not, you know, they're not reviewing a book. So they have that other Chad has that other podcast with 3-month review or 2-month review.
2-month review with what's his
Brian
name?
Wood.
Brian Wood, yeah.
Brian Wood is yep. Now that is where they tackle one book. I love that concept. I love that idea. Unfortunately, I've only read the 2 Rodrigo Fresson books that they've done. So I've only listened to that first season, that first season, the Invented part, and then the most recent season. Everything in between, I was not interested in the book, so I wasn't going to read. But I do really like that idea of breaking it up that way.
I kind of feel like it's a little long, like just having it go over so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that they take the time to go through the book.
Yeah, and I think with that too, like it is, if you took an hour of their podcast, probably 25 minutes is the book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's still like a lot of banter and, you know, like what's going on in the world and stuff like that. So you could, like, if you were just like, all right, we're going to be really strict about this as far as like just keeping it literary, you know, you could just do that in 30-minute segments as opposed to an hour and have less, you know.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I would much prefer it. It's just one episode and just talk.
Oh, yeah.
Because I find, like, I try, like, I did that. I've listened to Ducks Newbury Port and I've listened to Death and Spring. They're both interesting. I just feel like at their pace, I don't think I read at their pace.
Okay.
Like, one every, like, reading the book over 2 months. It feels a little slow.
Yeah. So
I'd much rather read the book than listen to that episode.
That's so what I did for the Invented part was like waited until they were done. You know what I mean? And that way, like, I could read what I wanted to read, but then I'd stop and listen to the podcast. And I listened and read it over 2 weeks instead of 2 months. Cause I mean, I'm not gonna read a book over 2 months, you know, especially since I typically do only read one thing at a time. But if there was like a Perrette podcast right now, I would be stopping probably, you know, every whatever and listening to the, you know, the podcast. Like that would be cool. So I do like that concept, but you're right, to follow along from the beginning. I guess that is what their concept is, isn't it? Yeah. That is a little tough. Yeah.
I think maybe next week we should do podcasts.
Yeah, I just,
there's a couple of other internet things we still need to cover.
All right, let's talk about the internet things. And we'll do the podcast next week. I've got to find something nice to say though. That's just a preview.
About podcasts.
I love podcasts, But I mean, specific to literary podcasts, like I have got way more that I cannot stand. You know what I mean?
I think
yeah,
that's worth talking about, but
that's
probably only if you don't mention names.
yeah. Maybe I don't know. Yeah. All right. What
I think. What about blogs? Do you follow many blogs?
No, I don't follow many
No.
blogs. I did like 10 years ago, and I think like a lot of people, I didn't write blogs, I just followed them and read them. I think like a lot of people that wrote though 10 years ago in blogs, like so many other avenues to discuss this stuff kind of came about.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is, but if I've just put down a great book and I would like to read more about it or talk about it or something, I would like to listen to someone. And I don't know what that, there's something maybe about the way I learn or the way I absorb information.
Yeah.
So that's why BookTube or podcasts work really well for me. Reading, it can be a lot. I mean, I have not found a lot of bloggers that have that combination of really good writing, especially when you read like we do. Like you kind of, I mean, you need to be really well written. Do you know what I mean? And then also are reviewing or talking about kind of interesting stuff. I don't know. What about you? Do you have blogs you follow?
There are blogs I follow. I still have a RSS feed of blogs that I follow. I still own a blog. I haven't written for a while.
Yeah.
But to me, my blog has now just become, this is a place where I store my writing.
Right.
I wish I was better written. I wish I was more frequent. But I like that medium of like, for me, when I finish a book, it's like, I'm not quite sure I understand everything about it or try to put it all in my head.
Yep.
If I write a review, sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't realize this is where my brain has taken me. And I begin to process what I've read in an interesting way where I think my brain just leads me down paths that I wasn't really thinking about consciously.
I'm the same way, but it happens to me through conversation, even when it's just me to the camera reviewing.
Yeah.
So when I do BookTube reviews, I don't write anything down, script wise or whatever. And I definitely come to like realize things and stuff like that. But through writing, I do write, but I don't write, I try to write fiction, like everybody who likes reading. Right. And so I don't, God, I just feel so inadequate to review something in writing. I don't know why that is, but
yeah, for me, I feel like it might be a nerve thing. It's when I'm sitting in front of a camera, I feel like I rush and I don't get everything I want to say. And it's hard to go back and edit that in because it's like, oh, I missed talking about something that I really wanted to talk about.
I definitely understand that. I do think that's why the conversation aspect when you're talking about a book is more fun in a way.
Yeah.
But I also think that you can't experience reading without just sitting down and reading. It's the only way to inject the stuff. And so you are always only going to share a part of a book or one version of how you read it or something like that. And so I'm really at peace with, especially like really difficult works. I am at peace with kind of like focusing in on one or two things, talking about that. And there have been some reviews where I absolutely feel the same way. I look back and I'm like, man, I could do a whole thing on this, but it's just like you move on because that plenty of readers, in so much as there are plenty of readers of the kind of books we like, but yeah, plenty of readers are going to have that same experience, stuff like that. And you kind of I like the rawness of just self-selecting whatever kind of comes. And I am okay letting some of that other stuff go and maybe not having that record of it.
Question, do you watch your older stuff?
No.
Like,
No,
I
don't. I don't watch unless there's a particular reason to. I don't watch a video of mine, even while I'm editing. I don't watch the whole thing. So yeah. I have a little pad like down here while I'm doing reviews. If I mess something up, I just write the time. If I know I want to put something up here, now that I've learned to do that, I'll write the time. Trying to think anything that I know I need. Hey, pay attention to that. But otherwise, once I've gotten like the beginning of the video to the end of the video, I'm pretty like I go through that stuff, add the things I do. I'm not going to sit there and then watch myself because I wouldn't post it ever. I never would have started posting. The very first one I did, the Crash no Hakari, I put Gosh, no, God. Laszlo,
yes, that's all right.
The very first one I did, Laszlo, I used this webcam I'm using now, or maybe I didn't even. It doesn't matter. I just put my computer up and recorded, and then on QuickTime, and then posted it on YouTube, and did nothing around it. And if I hadn't have done that, I never would have started doing this because I'm too self-conscious about what I'm saying. And I don't feel fit to talk about this stuff, but I want to, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things to follow is someone on that reading journey and seeing how they develop and how they grow from it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't watch my old videos, but if I read an old review, I can see, holy shit, I've definitely become a better reader. I've definitely become a better writer than that person.
Yeah, and I mean, I love going through and looking at my shelf. Like my parents are coming next Sunday to socially distance visit us for Mother's Day, and my dad called today and he said, "Can you pull some books for me?" Well, that is a very difficult task for anyone, but especially for my dad's not, spoiler alert, a translated literature fan. So obviously, though, there's lots of stuff I have that might work, might not. And it's so much fun for me to go through that stuff and see the reading kind of, even though, when we had our conversations about shelving, I thought more and more about, man, I should really switch this haul up if I could figure out how to do it chronologically as I read them. But it would just be I wouldn't remember, you know what I mean?
You could just use Goodreads to remember what you read.
Yeah. I mean, so we've talked this whole time. We haven't mentioned Goodreads, which is isn't that the popular and most biggest thing for readers in the internet?
I guess it is the place that, it is the place that most people use to track their reading, I guess, is the way to do it.
So people don't really review on it as much anymore?
There are people that still review. Most of it is about tracking your reading.
Okay.
There are groups on there where you can join, but groups have kind of died out. They were like message boards.
So Goodreads is not like as robust as it used to be of a community. Would you say that?
I think it's more people just tracking what they're reading.
Okay.
That's from my experience. There probably are other people that go, I've met so many friends I've like from using Goodreads, but for me, it just feels like, I started this book, I finished this book, I gave it 4 stars.
Yeah, I mean, so that's really interesting that I feel like a lot of things we talked about tonight either used to serve the purpose or were never set up to serve the purpose, which is kind of Twitter's thing, and it just makes me wonder where the readers who want to be involved in community you know that we all need the internet for this, because there's no way your local book club is going to satisfy
Yeah.
taste that way. You know, it's like it almost feels like there's a place everyone's hanging out that we don't know about.
I think there probably is. They're just
Yeah.
not telling us.
I always assume there is, right? Like that's just my personality.
Yeah. I think Discord could be the next thing.
I agree.
Because there are a lot you can do. You can set up voice channels and you can just have everyone join in and have a conversation.
You can record a podcast through it, right?
Yeah, you can do a lot of things with it. It is a very powerful tool. I think the problem with it is not many people know about it, and trying to find a community can be difficult.
Well,
I'm going to start a little community on there, and that's difficult.
Maybe we should push it more. Now, you have yours as literary Discord, right? Like not specific to translated.
No, I just called it the Literary Discord because I like the sound of that.
I think that's smart, because the problem, like some of my problem has been like if you just do translated, you're making it too small.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I put in movies and TV because I thought that'd be interesting things to have as conversations as well.
Yeah, I mean the other, like I know we're closing up in a minute, but the thing about the message board culture that I like that Discord has is the whole idea was like you went to one board for a purpose, say it was music, a band, whatever, but it was the off-topic thread, you know, forums, part of the forums that were so interesting, you know, and that's what I like about the Discord is that, yeah, I mean, I don't always have something to say about the book I'm reading, but like we're always watching a TV show. You know what I mean? Like we all like saw a thing, you know, and then you're getting to know people and their taste in such a broader level. And literature just, I mean, it's one part of culture, but I usually say like, if you share my taste in literature, like we probably are going to vibe pretty well on movies. You know, music is different, as I've said before. I think that's very different, but we'll probably vibe well on movies, TV shows, and other aspects of culture, you know.
I don't know if you don't track your reading. Do you track your movies?
No, I don't track anything. I mean, I am not a practicing Buddhist, but I am 100% philosophically inclined that way. And truly, I mean, I'm saying this like earnestly, as dorky as it sounds, like try to live 100% in the moment and do not like have that gene, that part that wants to, I don't look back that much. Like I really don't. And part of that has to do with like not tracking the movies. I mean, I know what I've seen, but I want to remember things the way I remember them, not the way they happened. You know, that Mark Twain quote. You know what I mean? Like that's important to me. If it's something I do this BookTube channel in part so that my kids will know one day what it was that their dad liked and listened to and stuff. That's absolutely an aspect of it. But only having kids did I become at all interested in any sort of preservation of memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very comfortable with this moment being all that there exists in the world.
Well, this moment has ended.
It has. And that's the problem with that philosophy, is now it's gone.
Yeah, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
So next week probably do just podcasts, not just bookish, all types of podcasts. That'll be an interesting conversation to have.
That will be, yeah.
And
we'll also get to know a little bit more about each other's outside interests, because that's what podcasts will do. Well,
most of mine are literary. I don't listen to many others.
All right. Well, spoiler alert, I do. So,
or maybe I'll find some things worth listening to.
Okay.
All right. So links obviously in the description to your channel, to the Discord. They're the two important ones. I'd love to build that community and have people just talking about books and movies and TV, and it's just a nice little place to just have those conversations.
Yeah.
And I think if it grows, we can obviously create more channels where people can have more discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I just think because there's a small community now, that keeping it small as the French is what needs to happen. Otherwise, it's just all over the place.
Yeah, you have to let that stuff grow organically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will grow.
Yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you next week, probably.
All right, absolutely will. Thanks, Michael. Take care.
All right. Catch you.